The stranger was dying in the mud, and no one in the village of Briar Hollow cared enough to stop. Soraya noticed him first by scent, not the sharp copper of blood, though there was plenty of that, but something beneath it, something rich and ancient, like pine forests after rainfall, like embers buried deep in ash. It called to a part of her she had learned long ago to silence. "Another beggar," muttered Widow Hester, stepping around the crumpled figure without breaking stride. "Probably a deserter from the northern wars. Let the crows have him." The market square bustled with its usual afternoon commerce, villagers weaving between stalls of withered vegetables and salted fish. None spared more than a passing glance at the man collapsed near the well. His clothes were rags, filthy and torn. Matted dark hair obscured his face. He could have been anyone. He could have been no one. But Soraya could not look away. She clutched her empty basket tighter, painfully aware of the 3 copper coins in her pocket, all that remained until the next moon's wages from the tannery. Wren needed medicine. The roof needed patching before the autumn storms. They needed everything, and she had almost nothing. "Walk away," she told herself. "You cannot save everyone." The stranger stirred, lifting his head just enough for her to glimpse his face, sharp cheekbones beneath layers of grime, a jaw shadowed with days of stubble, and eyes gods above, his eyes the color of molten amber, burning with fever and something far more dangerous. Those eyes found hers across the square, and Soraya felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "Omega," someone sneered. Soraya turned to find 3 young alphas from the tanning district swaggering toward the fallen man. She recognized their leader, Brennan, the overseer's son, who had cornered her behind the workshop last winter. She still remembered his hands, his threats, the way he had laughed when she fought back. "Looks like we've got ourselves some entertainment." Brennan kicked the stranger's ribs with casual cruelty. The man grunted, but did not cry out, his amber gaze never leaving Soraya's face. "Pathetic," Brennan spat. "Can't even beg properly. What's wrong, dog? Lost your voice?" The stranger's lips moved. Words emerged, barely audible, in a language Soraya did not recognize, but she understood the tone, not pleading, warning. Brennan laughed and kicked him again, harder. "Does the beggar think he's threatening me?" Something hot and reckless ignited in Soraya's chest. Before she could think better of it, she was moving, placing herself between the alphas and the fallen stranger. "Leave him alone." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Brennan's eyes widened, then narrowed with ugly pleasure. Well, the little Omega thinks she has teeth." He stepped closer, his alpha scent thick with aggression. "Maybe I should remind you of your place. My place is wherever I choose to stand." Soraya's voice trembled, but she held her ground. "And right now, I'm standing here. You'd defend this filth? This worthless beggar?" Brennan gestured contemptuously at the stranger. "He's probably diseased, definitely dying. What could he possibly matter to you?" Soraya looked down at the man behind her. His eyes had not left her face, and in their amber depths, she saw something that made her forget how to breathe. Not gratitude, but recognition. As if he had been waiting for her. As if he had always known she would come. "He matters because he's a person," she said quietly. "And I will not watch another person be kicked to death for sport." The stranger made a sound then, low and rough. It might have been a word. It might have been her name, though she had never told it to him. The sound sent shivers cascading down her spine. "She wants the beggar," one of Brennan's companions laughed. "Let her have him. They deserve each other, worthless Omega and worthless vagrant." Brennan held Soraya's gaze for a long moment, violence simmering behind his eyes. Then he smiled, and it was worse than his anger. "Fine. Take your beggar, little Omega. But remember this kindness when you come crawling back to the tannery. Remember who showed you mercy." He leaned close enough that his breath fouled her cheek. "And remember that mercy always has a price." The alphas departed, their laughter echoing across the square. Only when they vanished around the corner did Soraya allow herself to breathe. She knelt beside the stranger, her hands hovering uncertainly over his battered body. Up close, the wrongness of his condition became starkly apparent. Beneath the dirt and blood, his skin held an ashen pallor that spoke of poison, not mere injury. Dark veins crawled up the side of his neck, pulsing with something that looked almost black. "Can you stand?" she asked. Those amber eyes studied her with unnerving intensity. When he spoke again, his accent was thick, the words halting. "You should not have done that." "Probably not," Soraya agreed. "Can you stand?" A ghost of something crossed his features, surprise, perhaps, or the memory of amusement. "For you, I will try." It took all her strength to help him rise. He was larger than she had realized, tall enough to dwarf her, broad across the shoulders despite his gaunt frame. His weight against her side felt like anchoring herself to a mountain. "I have nothing to offer you," he said as they stumbled toward the edge of the square. "No coin. No name worth speaking. I didn't ask for anything." "Why help me then?" Soraya thought of all the times she had needed help and found none. Thought of her mother dying while the village healer demanded payment they could not afford. Thought of Ren's thin face, of the endless hunger that had become their constant companion. "Because someone should," she said simply. The stranger was silent for a long moment. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "You are not what I expected." Soraya had no idea what that meant. She focused instead on the path ahead, on the long walk to her cottage at the village edge, on the impossible task of keeping this stranger alive long enough to discover why her heart raced every time his amber eyes met hers. She did not know she was carrying a king. She did not know that her kindness would change everything, and she certainly did not know that before the night was over, she would break his heart completely. The cottage was small, barely more than 2 rooms with a leaking roof and a hearth that smoked when the wind blew from the east. But it was home, and it was safe, and right now it was all Soraya could offer. "Soraya," Ren's voice piped from inside as she shouldered open the door. "You're back early. Did you find—" Her little brother stopped mid-sentence, his eyes growing wide at the sight of the massive stranger draped over their sister's shoulders. "Who's that?" "Someone who needs help." Soraya guided the stranger toward the straw pallet near the hearth. "Fetch me the water bucket, and the herbs from the drying rack, the yellow root, and the feverfew." Ren scrambled to obey, his small face pale with worry. At 9 years old, he had already learned that strangers meant danger, but he had also learned to trust his sister without question. The stranger collapsed onto the pallet with a groan that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than his chest. His eyes fluttered, amber irises rolling back as consciousness fled. "Don't you dare die," Soraya muttered, pulling away his tattered shirt to assess the damage. What she found made her stomach lurch. The wounds themselves were brutal enough. Deep gashes across his ribs, mottled bruises covering his torso. What looked like a blade wound in his left side that had been crudely stitched and was now weeping infection. But it was the dark veins that terrified her. They spread from a puncture wound near his collarbone, branching across his skin like black lightning frozen mid-strike. "What is this?" she whispered. She had seen poison before, rat bane and hemlock, and the slow creep of infected wounds. This was different. This looked alive, malevolent, as if something were crawling through his blood with deliberate purpose. "Here." Ren appeared at her elbow, arms full of dried herbs and the wooden water bucket sloshing against his knees. "Is he going to die? Not if I can help it." But even as she spoke, Soraya felt doubt coiling in her stomach. She was no healer. She knew only what her mother had taught her before the fever took her: basic remedies, simple poultices, enough to treat cuts and colds, but nothing like this. She worked through the evening regardless, cleaning his wounds with boiled water, packing the infected gash with yellow root paste, forcing feverfew tea past his cracked lips whenever he surfaced enough to swallow. Ren helped without complaint, fetching and carrying and keeping the fire fed. As night fell and the stranger's fever climbed ever higher, Soraya found herself studying his face in the flickering firelight. Beneath the grime and suffering, his features held a stark beauty: high cheekbones, a strong nose, lips that might curve into something devastating if they ever smiled. There was something almost familiar about him, though she could not place it. "He talks in his sleep," Ren reported, settling beside her with a bowl of thin broth that would serve as their supper. "Funny words, not like ours." Soraya nodded. She had heard the stranger's fevered mutterings, fragments of that musical, unfamiliar language that seemed to resonate in her bones. "Maybe he's from the Northern Territories," Ren continued. "Maybe he's a soldier from the King's army. They say the Alpha King has been fighting the rebellion for 2 years now. Maybe he got wounded and had to run away. Maybe." Soraya sipped her broth without tasting it. "Or maybe he's just a traveler who fell on hard times." "Do you think the Alpha King is really as terrible as everyone says?" Ren's voice dropped to a whisper, as if speaking treason even in their own home. "Widow Hester says he's a monster. She says he burns villages and takes omegas for his harem and bathes in the blood of his enemies." The stranger made a sound something between a growl and a groan. Soraya's head snapped toward him, but his eyes remained closed, his breathing still ragged with fever. "Widow Hester says a lot of things," she murmured. But the truth was, she had heard the same stories. Everyone had. The Alpha King of Valdoria was a name spoken in whispers, a shadow that loomed over the entire realm. His war against the rebel lords had dragged on for years, leaving devastation in its wake. Refugees flooded the southern villages with tales of burned fields and slaughtered innocents. I hope I never meet him, Soraya said quietly. Any alpha who would cause such suffering, who would use his power to crush those weaker than himself. She shook her head. That is not strength. That is cruelty wearing a crown. The stranger's eyes flew open. Soraya gasped, nearly dropping her bowl. His gaze was clearer than before, the fever still present but banked somehow, and fixed on her face with devastating intensity. You hate him. His voice was rough as gravel, his accent thick, but the words unmistakable. The king. Soraya's cheeks flushed, caught speaking ill of royalty to a stranger whose loyalties she did not know. I don't know him. I only know what I've heard, and what you've heard makes you hate him. What I've heard makes me fear him, and pity anyone unfortunate enough to draw his attention. She lifted her chin. Why? Do you serve him? Are you one of his soldiers? Something shifted in his amber eyes, pain that had nothing to do with his wounds. A darkness that seemed to swallow the firelight. No, he said finally. I am no one's soldier. But even as he spoke, Soraya saw his hands clench in the rough blanket, saw the muscle feather in his jaw. He was lying. Or rather, not telling her everything, which amounted to the same thing. You should rest, she said, rising to put distance between them. The fever will break by morning, or it won't. Either way, there's nothing more I can do tonight. The stranger caught her wrist as she turned away. His grip was weak, trembling, but his touch sent lightning racing up her arm. Thank you, he said, for your kindness. For defending me when you had no reason to. Soraya looked down at his hand on her wrist, at the black veins crawling toward his fingers. Everyone deserves kindness. No. His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. Not everyone. His eyes closed, and his grip went slack as unconsciousness claimed him once more. But his words echoed in Soraya's mind long after Ren had fallen asleep in his corner and the fire had burned down to embers. Not everyone deserves kindness. What had this stranger done, she wondered, to believe that about himself? Soraya woke to the sound of screaming. She scrambled upright, heart pounding, reaching instinctively for the knife she kept beneath her pillow. But the cottage was undisturbed. Ren still slept, curled in his blankets. The fire had died to coals, and the screaming was coming from the stranger. He thrashed on the pallet, back arched, cords standing out in his neck as sounds tore from his throat that barely seemed human. His skin glistened with sweat, and in the dim glow of the embers, Soraya could see the black veins pulsing, spreading, and climbing toward his face. Wake up! She dropped to her knees beside him, grabbing his shoulders. His skin burned beneath her palms. It's a dream. You're safe. Wake up. His eyes snapped open, but they were wrong, no longer amber but molten gold, blazing with an inner light that made her breath catch. And his scent, that pine and ember scent she had noticed in the market, suddenly crashed over her like a wave, so potent it made her vision swim. Alpha. The word blazed through her mind. Not just any alpha, something more, something ancient. You, he rasped, and his voice had changed too, deeper, resonant with a growl that vibrated in her chest. I can smell you. I've been smelling you for hours, trying to resist, trying to remember why I shouldn't. His hand came up to cup her face, and Soraya knew she should pull away. Every instinct screamed danger, but his touch was reverent, trembling, and his golden eyes held such raw hunger that she could not move. Mate, he breathed. You're my mate. I knew it the moment you stood between me and those alphas. I knew it, and I tried to fight it, but the poison is burning away my control and I can't. I don't understand. Soraya's voice came out strange, breathy. Her body was responding to him without her permission, heat pooling low in her belly, her pulse racing in her throat. We just met. How can you possibly? Do you feel it? His thumb traced her cheekbone, and the touch left trails of fire on her skin. This pull between us, this need. Tell me you feel it too. She did. Gods help her, she did. From the moment she had seen him collapsed in the square, something in her had recognized him, called to him, and yearned for him in ways she could not explain. This isn't real, she whispered. It's the fever, the poison. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. His other hand found the curve of her waist, drawing her closer despite her weak resistance. I've waited 300 years for you, 300 years of loneliness and duty and endless, empty nights. And now you're here, and you're perfect, and you think I'm a monster. 300 years. The words should have shocked her, should have broken the spell. But the gold of his eyes held her captive, and his scent wrapped around her like chains she had no desire to escape. "I don't think you're a monster," she heard herself say. "You do. You said you hate the Alpha King. You said any alpha who would cause such suffering deserves only pity and fear." The words hit her like cold water. She remembered saying them, remembered the way his eyes had flickered with pain. "You're not." She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't make her mouth form the impossible question. He answered it anyway. "I am Kaelin," he said, his voice cracking on the name like a confession, like a curse. "First of my name. Alpha King of Valdoria, and you, my beautiful brave, impossible Omega, you are the mate I never thought I would find." Soraya's world tilted. The Alpha King, the monster of every bedtime story and whispered warning, the tyrant whose war had displaced thousands, whose name mothers used to frighten children into obedience. She was in her cottage with the Alpha King, and he was calling her his mate. No. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, gentle but inexorable. "I'm sorry." Tears gathered in those golden eyes, actual tears, tracking down his fever-flushed cheeks. "I'm sorry for everything you've heard, for everything my enemies have made you believe. But I cannot let you go. The bond won't let me, and the poison is spreading, and if I don't claim you now, I will die and leave you alone, and I cannot." "This isn't fair," Soraya gasped. "You can't just decide." "I'm not deciding anything." His forehead dropped to hers, his breath hot against her lips. "Fate decided long before either of us was born. I am only surrendering to it." His mouth found her throat, and Soraya's protest died in her chest. His lips traced the column of her neck, searching, tasting, until they found the spot where her pulse hammered beneath her skin. "Tell me to stop," he growled against her flesh. "Tell me you don't want this, and I will fight until the poison takes me. I will die before I force you." Soraya opened her mouth to say the words. To refuse him, this stranger, this king, this impossible twist of fate. But what emerged was something else entirely. "Don't stop." His teeth pierced her skin, and the world exploded into sensation. Pain and pleasure tangled together, racing through her veins like liquid fire. She felt him everywhere in her blood, in her bones, in the deepest reaches of her soul where she had always felt alone. And then she felt something else, something dark and wrong surging through the bond between them. The poison. It was inside her now. Soraya screamed as agony ripped through her body, as her vision went black at the edges, as she felt herself falling into an abyss with no bottom. The last thing she heard was Kaelin's voice, raw with horror and despair. No. What have I done?" Consciousness returned in fragments, firelight dancing on rough-hewn walls, the smell of herbs and wood smoke, a small hand gripping hers with fierce determination. "She's waking up!" Ren's voice high with relief. "Soraya, can you hear me?" Soraya forced her eyes open, wincing at the brightness. Her body felt strange, heavy, and light at the same time, as if she had been hollowed out and filled with something new. "Ren." Her voice came out as a croak. "What happened?" "You collapsed." Her brother's face swam into focus, pale and tear-streaked. "Both of you collapsed. I didn't know what to do. I thought you were dead." Memory crashed back. The stranger, Kaelin the Alpha King, his teeth in her throat, the poison surging through the bond. Soraya's hand flew to her neck. Her fingers found smooth skin, unmarked, as if the bite had never happened. But she could feel it, a warmth beneath the surface, a presence at the edge of her consciousness that had not been there before. "Where is he?" Ren's expression flickered. He's better. I don't understand how, but he's better." Soraya turned her head and found Kaelin. He had moved from the pallet to sit against the opposite wall, watching her with eyes that had returned to their amber hue. The black veins were gone from his skin. Color had returned to his cheeks. He looked like a different man from the dying beggar she had dragged home from the market. He looked like a king. "You saved me." His voice was quiet, wondering. "The bond when I bit you, it should have transferred the poison to you and killed you. Instead, something in you burned it away. Something in your blood that I have never encountered in 300 years of life." Soraya pushed herself upright, ignoring the wave of dizziness. "What are you talking about?" "The poison was created specifically to kill my kind." Kaelin rose slowly, approaching her with careful steps as if she were a wild creature who might bolt. "It targets our nature, the wolf within. No ordinary human could survive its touch, let alone destroy it." "I'm ordinary," Soraya insisted. "I'm no one. A tanner's daughter with no family, no status. No, you are my mate." He knelt before her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his healed body. "You are bonded to me now, which means you are far from ordinary." And unless I am very much mistaken, he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with heartbreaking gentleness. You carry a bloodline that should have died out centuries ago. I don't understand any of this. Neither do I. Not yet. His hand lingered on her cheek, and despite everything, the shock, the fear, the impossibility of it all, Soraya felt herself leaning into his touch. But I intend to find out. And I intend to protect you, whether you want my protection or not. I never asked. I know. Something like grief shadowed his features. You asked for nothing except to help a stranger you believed was worthless. You defended me without knowing who I was. And then you spoke of the Alpha King with such hatred in your voice. Soraya's cheeks burned. I didn't know. No. And that is precisely why your words cut so deep. He smiled, but it was a broken thing. Every terrible story you have heard about me is either a lie spread by my enemies or a truth twisted beyond recognition. I am not blameless, no king can be, but I am not the monster they have made me. Then what are you? Kaelin held her gaze for a long moment. I am a man who has been fighting a war for 20 years against those who would enslave every Omega in the realm. I am a king whose own council has betrayed him and left him poisoned in a hostile village. And I am, apparently, a fool who has fallen desperately in love with the one woman in all the world who had every reason to hate him before they ever met. Soraya's breath caught in her throat. Love is not something that happens in a day. No, he agreed. But recognition is. And I recognize you, Soraya. My wolf recognized you the moment your scent reached me in that square. You are mine, and I am yours, and nothing, not war, not politics, not 300 years of loneliness will ever change that. Before she could respond, a pounding came at the cottage door. Soraya, a rough voice bellowed from outside. Open this door by order of Lord Varen. Kaelin's expression transformed in an instant, the tender lover vanishing behind the mask of a warrior. He moved with fluid grace, positioning himself between Soraya and the door. Who is Lord Varen? He demanded quietly. The regional overseer, Brennan's father. Fear clawed at Soraya's throat. He controls everything in Briar Hollow. If he's here, then my enemies have found me faster than I anticipated. Kaelin's amber eyes began to glow gold at the edges. Take your brother and hide. Whatever happens, do not reveal what you are to me. Not until I understand it myself. What I am to you? I don't even know what that means. The door shuddered under another blow. Kaelin turned back to her, and in his eyes she saw something that cracked her heart, not fear for himself, but fear for her. The Alpha King of Valdoria, who had conquered armies and survived assassination attempts and ruled for 3 centuries, was terrified of what might happen to the poor Omega who had shown him kindness. It means everything, he said, and I will die before I let them take you from me. The door burst open. Lord Varen stepped through the shattered doorframe, flanked by 6 armored guards. He was a broad man, thick with muscle turning to fat, his alpha scent sour with cruelty and corruption. Behind him, Brennan lurked with a smile that made Soraya's skin crawl. Well. Varen's gaze swept the cottage, lingering on Kaelin with predatory interest. The beggar from the market. I received a most interesting report about you. Kaelin stood motionless, but Soraya could feel tension radiating from him like heat from a forge. Through the strange new bond between them, she sensed his wolf pacing, calculating, preparing. I am merely a traveler, Kaelin said, his accent thickened deliberately. This kind woman offered me shelter. I mean no trouble. No trouble? Varen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. A stranger appears in my village, half dead from wounds that look remarkably like battlefield injuries. And I'm supposed to believe he's just a traveler? Believe what you wish. Varen's eyes narrowed. Search him. 2 guards moved forward. Kaelin allowed them to approach, standing perfectly still as they patted down his ragged clothing. Soraya held her breath, unsure what they might find. Nothing, my lord, one guard reported. No weapons, no coin, no identification. Interesting. Varen circled Kaelin slowly, studying him like a horse at auction. No identification, yet you carry yourself like a man accustomed to authority. Your accent marks you as northern-born, yet you wear southern rags. And those wounds... He paused, leaning closer. Those wounds were made by claws, not blades. Soraya's pulse faltered. Claws, the black veins, the mention of wolves in 300 years. Pieces began clicking together in her mind, forming a picture she was not ready to see. Perhaps I was attacked by wild animals, Kaelin said evenly. The forests are dangerous. Perhaps. Varen stepped back, nodding to his men. Or perhaps you are something far more valuable than a common beggar. Take him. No. The word tore from Soraya's throat before she could stop it. She lunged forward, placing herself between Kaelin and the guards just as she had done in the market square. Varen's eyebrows rose. The Omega speaks. How charming. His gaze dropped to her throat, and something flickered in his expression: recognition, greed, calculation. He suspected what she was. Remove your hair from your neck, girl. Soraya's blood turned to ice. What? You heard me. Show me your throat. Kaelin moved then, faster than thought, placing himself before her with a growl that shook dust from the rafters. You will not touch her. The cottage erupted into chaos. Guards surged forward. Kaelin met them with devastating efficiency, his movements fluid and lethal despite his recently healed body. Soraya grabbed Ren and pulled him into the corner, shielding him with her body as furniture shattered and men screamed. It was over in seconds. 4 guards lay groaning on the floor. The remaining 2 had retreated to flank their lord, swords drawn with trembling hands. Kaelin stood in the center of the destruction, breathing hard, his eyes blazing full gold. In that moment, he looked nothing like a beggar. He looked like exactly what he was, a predator who had been pretending to be prey. Impossible, Varen breathed. The poison should have killed you. We watched them administer it ourselves. We, the word hung in the air like a death sentence. So, Kaelin's voice had dropped to something barely human, resonant with power that made the walls tremble. You are the ones who betrayed me. You and whatever council rats paid you to do their dirty work. Varen's face went pale, then red with desperate fury. You don't understand. The realm is better off without you. Your obsession with protecting Omegas. Your refusal to let the old ways continue. You're destroying everything the nobility has built. The old ways. Kaelin's laugh was hollow. You mean the trafficking, the forced bonds, the breeding farms where Omegas are treated like livestock. Soraya felt sick. She had heard whispers of such things, dark rumors from the northern territories where the rebel lords held power, but she had never imagined. They are Omegas, Varen spat. They exist to serve, to breed, to be owned. That is the natural order. And you? Kaelin moved. One moment he stood across the room. The next, his hand was wrapped around Varen's throat, lifting the larger man off his feet with terrifying ease. The natural order, Kaelin said softly, is whatever I say it is. I am the Alpha King, and I have spent 20 years trying to drag this realm out of the darkness that men like you would condemn it to. Kill me, Varen choked, and my allies will burn this village to the ground, starting with your precious Omega and her whelp of a brother. Kaelin's grip tightened. Soraya could see the war in his eyes, the king who knew Varen was right, battling the wolf who wanted nothing more than to tear out his throat. Kaelin. She spoke his name for the first time, and his entire body shuddered at the sound. Don't. Please. Not for us. He turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw something shatter. I have to go, he said, releasing Varen to crumple gasping on the floor. If I stay, they will use you against me. They will hurt you to break me, and I cannot. His voice cracked. I cannot watch that happen. Then take us with you. I can't. The words seemed to cost him everything. The journey to my territory is long and dangerous, and you are newly bonded. The strain could kill you before we reached safety. He crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands with desperate gentleness. I will send for you. The moment it is safe, I will send my most trusted warriors to bring you home. Home? Soraya's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. I don't even know where that is anymore. Wherever I am. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in. Wherever you are, that is home now. A commotion outside, more guards approaching, drawn by the sounds of combat. Kaelin pulled back, his expression hardening into royal command. Varen, you will leave this woman and her brother untouched. If a single hair on her head is harmed, I will return and erase your bloodline from existence. Do you understand? Varen, still gasping on the floor, managed a jerky nod. Soraya, Kaelin's voice softened. I'm sorry, for all of it. For biting you without consent. For dragging you into a war you never asked to fight. For leaving you now when every part of me screams to stay. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, lingering as if memorizing the feel of her. Wait for me. Then he was gone, moving through the back window with inhuman grace, vanishing into the night like smoke. Soraya stood frozen in the wreckage of her cottage, one hand pressed to her throat where she could still feel the echo of his bite. Through the bond, she felt him running, felt his pain and fury and desperate love like it was her own. Wait for me, he had said. She would, even if it destroyed her. The days that followed were the longest of Soraya's life. Varen had kept his word, she and Ren remained untouched. though guards now patrolled the village with new frequency, and Brennan's leering presence seemed to appear wherever she went. The message was clear. She was being watched, but the external threats paled compared to what was happening inside her. It started 3 days after Kaylin's departure, a restlessness that made sleep impossible, an ache in her chest that no herb could soothe. She found herself standing at the window for hours, staring toward the northern mountains as if she could will him to appear. "You're not eating again." Wren's voice was small, worried. "Soraya, please. You're scaring me." She looked down at the bowl of porridge that had gone cold in her hands. When had she last felt hungry? When had she last felt anything except this gnawing emptiness? "I'm fine," she lied. "Just tired." But she was not fine. Each day, the ache grew worse. Her skin felt too tight, her blood too hot. She would wake in the night gasping from dreams so vivid they left her shaking. Dreams of running through moonlit forests, of golden eyes in the darkness, of a voice calling her name in that musical northern tongue. And sometimes, in the space between sleeping and waking, she could feel him. Kaylin. His presence brushed against her consciousness like a hand reaching through fog. The incomplete bond still transmitted emotions, his worry, his longing, his desperate determination to reach her, but each transmission left her weaker than before, draining her life force drop by drop. He was alive, he was fighting, and he was coming for her. On the 7th day, Brennan came to the cottage. "My father requests your presence," he said, his smile oily with satisfaction. "There are questions about your guest." Soraya had no choice but to follow. Wren clung to her hand as they walked through the village toward the overseer's manor, his small face pale with fear. The manor was the largest building in Briar Hollow, a stone structure that had once been a minor lord's hunting lodge. Varen had claimed it years ago, turning it into a seat of petty power from which he ruled the village with an iron fist. Inside, the great hall had been arranged like a courtroom. Varen sat in a high-backed chair, flanked by advisors. Soraya did not recognize hard-faced men in traveling clothes whose scent marked them as powerful alphas. "Ah, the Omega." Varen gestured magnanimously. "Come forward, child. My associates have questions." Soraya approached on unsteady legs. Through the bond, she felt a sudden spike of alarm. Kaylin, somehow sensing her distress across the miles. "This is her?" One of the strangers circled her slowly, nostrils flaring. "The one who somehow survived the mating bite?" "So our local guards reported." Varen leaned forward eagerly. "Remarkable, isn't it? The poison should have transferred through the bond and killed her within minutes. Instead, she appears completely healthy. Appears being the key word." The stranger stopped before her, tilting her chin up with cold fingers. "Remove the hair from your neck." Soraya's hand trembled as she obeyed, revealing the smooth skin where Kaylin's bite had healed without a trace. The stranger inhaled sharply. "There's no mark. The bond is incomplete." "What does that mean?" Varen demanded. "It means she's dying." The stranger released her chin with something like disappointment. "The mating bond requires reciprocation to stabilize. Without her bite on him, the connection will slowly consume her life force. She has perhaps 2 weeks, maybe less. And the deterioration accelerates rapidly toward the end." The world tilted beneath Soraya's feet. Dying. She was dying. Fascinating. Varen stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Can we use her? As bait, perhaps, to draw the king back?" "We don't need bait anymore." The stranger smiled coldly. "Our forces intercepted his convoy 3 days ago. The Alpha King is our prisoner. By the next full moon, he will be publicly executed, and the realm will finally be free of his interference." "No." The word screamed through Soraya's mind. Through the bond, she felt Kaylin's presence flicker weak, wounded, but still alive. "The Omega is useless to us, then." Varen waved dismissively. "Kill her and the boy. We can't have loose ends." "No!" Soraya pulled Wren behind her, backing away from the advancing guards. "Please, he's just a child." "He's a witness." Varen's voice was bored. "Nothing personal, my dear." A guard seized her arm. Soraya struggled, but her weakened body refused to obey. Through the bond, she felt Kaylin's sudden surge of fury, of desperate helplessness, and something else, a command, ancient and primal, that seemed to echo from the very earth beneath her feet. Protect her. Protect them. Now. The manor doors exploded inward. Wolves poured through the opening, massive creatures with silver fur and golden eyes, their snarls shaking the walls. They fell upon the guards with savage efficiency, driving the alphas back in a chaos of blood and screaming. Soraya grabbed Wren and ran for the nearest exit, but a wolf cut off her path, the largest of the pack. its fur marked with patterns that seemed to shimmer in the torchlight. The wolf lowered its head, not in threat but in supplication, and when it raised its eyes to meet hers, Soraya saw intelligence there, recognition. It wanted her to climb on. "Ren, hold on to me," she commanded, pulling her brother onto the wolf's broad back before mounting herself. "Don't let go, no matter what happens." The wolf howled once, a sound that seemed to shake the stars, and then they were running through the ruined doors, through the village streets, into the darkness of the northern forests. Soraya clung to Silver Fur as trees blurred past, as the wind stole the breath from her lungs, as the bond in her chest grew stronger with every mile that disappeared beneath thundering paws. She was going to find Kalen. She was going to save him, or she was going to die trying. Soraya woke to warmth and softness, sensations so foreign after years of rough blankets and drafty walls that she thought she must still be dreaming. The ceiling above her was vaulted stone, carved with intricate patterns of running wolves and crescent moons. Silk curtains surrounded the bed where she lay, filtering light from windows that overlooked snow-capped mountains. "She wakes," a woman's voice, musical and calm. "Fetch the elder." Soraya tried to sit up and gasped as weakness drove her back against the pillows. Her body felt hollowed out, fragile, as if the slightest movement might shatter her. "Easy, child." An elderly woman appeared at her bedside, her silver hair braided with blue ribbons, her eyes a familiar shade of amber. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. The journey took more from you than we anticipated." "Where am I?" Soraya's voice came out as a croak. "Where's Ren? Where's—" "Your brother is safe. He's been asking for you every hour." The woman smiled gently. "You are in the citadel of the Northern Pack, the seat of the Alpha King's power. I am Thessaly, elder of the High Council and, I suppose, the closest thing to a healer you'll find among our kind. Northern Pack, Alpha King." The words tumbled through Soraya's mind, connecting with fragments of legend and whispered story. "Werewolves," she breathed. "You're all werewolves. We prefer the term shifters, but yes." Thessaly settled into a chair beside the bed. "And before you ask, yes, your mate is one of us. The first and most powerful of our kind, born over 300 years ago when the world was younger and magic ran more freely through the earth. Mate." The word sent a spike of longing through Soraya's chest. "Where is he?" "The wolves who rescued us, they said he was captured." Thessaly's expression grew grave. "He was, but the king is not easily caged. He escaped his captors 2 days ago and has been fighting his way north ever since." She paused. "He knows you're here," the bond tells him, "but he also knows that I'm dying." Soraya finished the sentence quietly. "The man at the manor said the bond was incomplete, that without my bite on him, it would consume me." He spoke truly. Thessaly reached out to brush a strand of hair from Soraya's face, her touch gentle and ancient. "The mating bond is sacred among our people, a joining of souls that transforms both partners. When an alpha bites an omega, he gives part of his essence to her. But for the bond to stabilize, she must return the gift. Otherwise the essence burns through her." Soraya closed her eyes against the tears that threatened. "How long do I have?" "A week, perhaps 2, if you rest and conserve your strength. But the final days will come swiftly." Thessaly's voice softened. "But there is something else you should know, child. Something that has puzzled us since the wolves brought you here." Soraya forced her eyes open. "What? You should have died the moment Kalen bit you. His venom is lethal to ordinary humans. Even most omegas cannot survive a mating bite from one as old and powerful as he." Thessaly leaned closer, her amber eyes intent. "But you not only survived, you burned away the assassination poison that was killing him. You healed through the bond in ways we have never witnessed. I don't understand. Neither do we. But our scholars have been searching the ancient texts, and they found something remarkable." Thessaly produced a worn leather tome, opening it to a page illuminated with silver ink. "There is a bloodline lost, we thought, centuries ago that carries a gift. A divine spark from the first Omega, the goddess who created our kind alongside the first Alpha." Soraya stared at the illustration on the page. A woman wreathed in moonlight, her eyes glowing with power, her hand resting on the bowed head of a great silver wolf. "The Omega Ascendant," Thessaly continued. "A mortal woman carrying the blood of the goddess herself. It is said that when she finds her true mate, her power awakens. That she can heal any wound, break any curse, and complete any bond, even one that should have been fatal. You think I'm—" Soraya couldn't finish the sentence. It was too impossible, too far removed from her life of poverty and struggle. "I think you are far more than you know." Thessaly closed the book gently. But the only way to prove it, the only way to save both yourself and your mate, is to complete the bond. How do I do that if he's not here? Before Thessaly could answer, shouts erupted from somewhere below. Running footsteps echoed through the stone corridors, growing louder by the second. The chamber door burst open, and Ren tumbled through, his face alight with excitement. "Soraya, the king is here. He's at the gates, and he's asking for you. And the wolves are all howling, and..." Soraya was already moving, throwing off the silk covers despite her weakness, driven by a force stronger than exhaustion. Through the bond, she felt him, felt his desperation, his love, his terror at what he would find. He thought she was dying. He thought he had killed her with his bite and his love and his inability to stay away. And she had to show him he was wrong, even if it meant breaking every rule she had ever learned, even if it meant becoming something she had never dreamed she could be. Soraya made it halfway down the grand staircase before her legs gave out. She would have tumbled down the remaining steps if strong arms had not caught her arms that felt like coming home, that smelled of pine forests and embers and everything she had been craving since the moment he left. "Soraya." Kalen's voice broke on her name. "Gods above, what have I done to you?" She looked up into his face and felt her heart shatter at what she saw. He was wounded, fresh gashes across his cheek, dried blood matting his hair, exhaustion carved into every line of his features, but it was his eyes that destroyed her. Those amber depths held such anguish, such self-loathing, that she wanted to weep. "You came back," she whispered. "I should never have left." He gathered her against his chest, cradling her as if she were made of glass. "I felt you weakening through the bond. Every day, a little more of your light fading, and I couldn't reach you. I was fighting through enemy lines while you were dying, and I couldn't." His voice cracked. Soraya felt wetness on her hair and realized the Alpha King was crying. "I'm not dead yet," she said softly. "Thessaly says there's still a chance. The completion ritual." Kalen pulled back to look at her, hope and terror warring in his expression. "She told me. But Soraya, you have to understand the ritual is dangerous. If your body rejects the transformation, if your human nature fights the wolf spirit, then I'll die anyway." She touched his face, tracing the wound on his cheek. "At least this way I have a chance. We have a chance. I can't lose you." The words seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. "I waited 300 years to find you. I cannot watch you die because I was too weak to control myself. You didn't do this to me." Soraya held his gaze with fierce determination. "Fate did. The goddess did. And I refuse to believe she brought us together just to tear us apart." Kalen stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, the despair giving way to something harder, more resolute. "The blood moon rises tonight," he said. "If we're going to attempt this, it must be now." The ritual chamber lay deep beneath the citadel, carved from living rock in an age before memory. Torches lined the circular walls, their flames casting dancing shadows across ancient symbols etched into the stone floor. "The blood moon is not merely a full moon," Thessaly explained as they descended into the depths. "It rises only once every 7 years, when the veil between worlds grows thin. That the timing aligns with your arrival, the goddess has not abandoned us." Soraya stood at the center of the chamber, dressed in a simple white gown that Thessaly had provided. Around her, the pack had gathered dozens of wolves in both human and animal form, their eyes reflecting the torchlight like scattered stars. Kalen approached her slowly, his own ceremonial robes dark as midnight. In the flickering light, he looked every inch the immortal king, powerful, ancient, and utterly devoted to the woman before him. "There is something I must tell you," he said quietly, "before we begin." Soraya's heart clenched. "What is it?" "That night in your cottage, when I told you I was falling in love with you." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "I lied." The world tilted. "What?" "I wasn't falling." His hands found hers, gripping tight. "I had already fallen. Completely. Irrevocably. From the moment you stood between me and those alphas, knowing you could be killed, knowing I was nothing but a worthless beggar, I was yours. Every part of me, for whatever time I have left in this world or any other." Tears spilled down Soraya's cheeks. "Kalen, I need you to know that," he continued fiercely. "In case this doesn't work, in case these are our last moments together, I need you to know that you didn't just save my life in that village. You saved my soul. You made me believe, for the first time in 3 centuries, that I could be more than a king, that I could be a mate, a partner." His voice dropped to a whisper. "A home." Soraya pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his. "Then let's finish this. Together." The ritual began with chanting low, rhythmic words in that ancient tongue that seemed to vibrate in Soraya's bones. The pack formed a circle around them, their voices rising and falling like waves against a shore. Thessaly stepped forward, a silver chalice in her hands. "Drink," she commanded. "Both of you. Let the blood of the first Alpha and the first Omega unite within you." The liquid was thick and warm, tasting of copper and moonlight and something older than time. Soraya felt it spreading through her veins, igniting something that had been sleeping deep inside her. "Now," Thessaly said, her amber eyes blazing. "Complete the bond." Kalen tilted his head back, baring his throat in the ancient gesture of submission. From the most powerful Alpha in existence, it was an act of absolute trust, absolute surrender. Soraya felt her own nature rising to meet his, not the frightened Omega who had cowered from Alphas her entire life, but something else, something fierce and ancient and infinitely powerful. She knew, without being told, exactly where to bite. Her teeth found the junction of his neck and shoulder, and she bit down with strength she didn't know she possessed. Kalen's roar shook the chamber, but he didn't pull away. Instead, his arms came around her, holding her against him as their souls collided. The bond exploded between them like a supernova. Soraya felt everything: his 300 years of loneliness, his desperate hope when he first scented her, his agony when he realized what his bite had done. She felt his love, vast and ancient and absolutely unconditional, pouring into her like sunlight into a dark room, and she gave him everything in return. Her fear, her courage, her stubborn determination to save a stranger who turned out to be a king, her growing love, unexpected and undeniable, for the man beneath the crown. "Mine," her soul sang. "Yours," his answered. "Always and forever yours." The transformation hit her like a lightning strike. Pain lanced through every cell of her body as something new awakened, something wild and primal and utterly magnificent. She felt her bones shifting, her senses expanding, her very nature rewriting itself to match the wolf spirit now bound to her soul. When the agony finally faded, Soraya opened her eyes to find herself on all fours, her vision sharper than it had ever been, her body thrumming with power she had never imagined. She was a wolf, pure white fur, golden eyes, and a heart that beat in perfect rhythm with the massive silver wolf standing beside her. The pack erupted into howls of celebration. The bond between Soraya and Kalen pulsed with warmth and completeness, two halves finally made whole. Later, after they had shifted back and the celebrations had quieted, Soraya found herself standing on a balcony overlooking the moonlit mountains. Kalen's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "My advisors are already planning the coronation," he murmured against her ear. "The realm hasn't had a queen in over 200 years. They're rather excited." "Queen," Soraya tested the word, found it strange on her tongue. "I was a tanner's daughter this morning, and now you're the mate of the Alpha King, bearer of the goddess bloodline, and the most powerful Omega born in 10 generations. Kalen pressed a kiss to her temple. "Life is full of surprises. What about Ren? He's already claimed a room in the family wing and made friends with half the pups in the Citadel. I believe he's decided to stay." Soraya laughed, the sound bright and free in the mountain air. For the first time in her life, she had no worries about food or shelter or safety. For the first time, she had a home. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "My king, my mate, my home." Kalen turned her in his arms, his amber eyes glowing with a love that spanned centuries. "And I love you," he replied. "My queen, my heart, my everything." When he kissed her beneath the blood moon's fading light, Soraya knew that this was not an ending. It was just the beginning. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. A big thank you to everyone who's following. Your support truly means the world to me.